Okay, in this topic I'm going to talk about website speed and what it means for your SEO. It's definitely a ranking factor. I think it's going to be increasingly a ranking factor going forwards, and typically people are going to abandon a search if they have to wait 3, 4, 5 seconds for something to load. Google's going to rank you down if you have a slow website. So you can check your website loading speed in a number of different ways. Google has its own tool, Google Page Insights. There's also tools like GTmetrix, which I've got a link to here, and Pingdom. All these things will give you an idea of how things are loading up on your site, how quick things are, give you a score. If you're worried about the speed of your website and the load up, you can improve things. If you're talking about Squarespace or Wix, there's only so far you're going to be able to go with those. Most of the settings you'd have, like an option like WordPress, you don't have on Squarespace and Wix. It's done for you, so you've got more limitations. But certainly you need to make sure that your images are optimized. So using compression software such as JPEG Mini is a good idea before you load up your images into any website, including Squarespace and Wix. If you have WordPress, then obviously there's a lot more things you can do. You can look at the host that you're using, make sure you've got a high quality host. You can use a CDN to distribute the WordPress data and sites all over the world, so it's much quicker to load up because the server is much closer to the person who's doing the search. You can review the number of plugins you have. Some plugins are going to be more efficient than others, etc., etc. Lots of things you can do on top of that. So some of the things I also suggest to think about from an SEO perspective is I would try and avoid things like fancy frames, additional scripts and embeds, fancy animated graphics, sliders. Photographers particularly have a lot of sliders on their websites. I don't use any sliders. I think they are inherently slow, because if you have a slider you've got 10 images embedded in them, and therefore the website has to load 10 images before it can show anything. So that's not going to look good from a SEO page speed point of view. I think also, if you think most people are using mobile devices to browse these days, 65–70%, most people want to scroll. They don't want to flip a slider on a mobile phone. I think it works better for desktop. So I typically wouldn't use sliders, and I would avoid embeds and animations and things. Sometimes you have to have them. Obviously, if you're doing a YouTube video, you'll want to embed that, for example. But I think typically you want to try and avoid anything that's too fancy. Other things that you can do are caching plugins, so things like WP Rocket, again adds optimizations to your WordPress website, and there are also image optimization plugins like Short Pixel or Smush as well. So it's a real balance. Sometimes adding plugins, even the ones that say they're going to optimize your site, will just reduce the speed, and it's a bit of balance. It's worth using GTmetrix or something similar to do some testing to work through that. Note of caution here, a lot of people try to make the site faster and faster, and there's a bit of a law of diminishing returns. If you have a good score but not the top score on GTmetrix, like a C or above, perhaps it's good enough, and you should spend your time writing content and do other things that are going to add value. You don't have to score an A to do well on SEO, although ideally you do, because then it makes it easier to rank. So it's a real balance. You've got to take a judgment and do some testing. So action steps: go on to GTmetrix now, take a look at the analysis, see what's coming back. Review your use of images, sliders, videos, etc. across the whole site. If you do use a YouTube video, try and add a thumbnail to the video rather than your website having to pull the thumbnail back each time from YouTube. That's going to speed things up. And as I say, just be really careful about fancy things that maybe a web designer might want to see on the site, but you might take a view that it's going to slow things down. You don't want a poor user experience, and you have to focus on mobile. So don't look at your website on a big screen in your office. Make sure you always look at it from your mobile phone first, and if it doesn't look great on that, you've got to do something different.